6 months into the war, humanity controlled half of the space that had once belonged to the Vex. Commander Lucas Wright coordinated dozens of simultaneous operations across multiple star systems. Each operation was designed to attack Vex supply lines and eliminate their ability to wage war. The strategy was working. The Vex could not replace their lost ships fast enough. The Vex could not repair their damaged facilities fast enough. The Vex could not train new soldiers fast enough to replace the ones they had lost in battle after battle. Lieutenant Kevin Drake sat in the intelligence center and watched the patterns emerging from Vex military movements. The Vex were becoming desperate. They were throwing their remaining forces into massive assaults, trying to break the human lines through sheer force. Every single one of these assaults failed. Kevin pulled up a report showing the latest intelligence from Vex Command. The report showed internal disagreement among Vex leadership. Some wanted to continue fighting. Some wanted to negotiate surrender. Some wanted to launch a final massive assault against human worlds, hoping to cause enough damage that humans would be forced to negotiate peace. Admiral Sareth was the one who wanted the final assault. She had taken command after Admiral Corvin's death. She believed that if the Vex could strike hard enough at human civilian centers, they could force humanity to negotiate. She did not understand that humans fought harder when their families were threatened. She did not understand human nature. Kevin delivered his intelligence report to Commander Wright. "She is planning something big," Kevin said, showing the data on the display. "All Vex military forces are being gathered in the Zeta sector. She is preparing for one massive strike against Earth orbit." Lucas studied the information. He could see exactly what Sareth was thinking. She wanted to prove that she was a strong leader. She wanted to force humans to feel the pain of war. She wanted to show that the Vex could still hurt humanity. What she did not understand was that her plan was being played out exactly as Lucas wanted it to play out. "Set the trap," Lucas ordered. "Get our forces in position. Let her think she is moving to attack an unprepared target. Then we close the net." Captain Angela Morrison was promoted to Admiral and given command of the Human Defensive Forces. She had proven herself in every battle. She understood strategy and tactics at a level that few humans possessed. She was now one of the most important military leaders in human space. Angela received Lucas's orders and began to deploy her forces. She positioned human ships inside asteroid fields where they would be hidden from Vex sensors. She set up decoy stations that appeared to be undefended but were actually fully armed. She created false communication signals, suggesting that human forces were spread thin and unprepared for a major assault. All across human space, other commanders moved their ships into position. This was going to be the largest battle of the entire war. This was where the Vex would try to break human resistance. This was where humanity would break the Vex completely. The Vex fleet arrived in the Zeta sector with 600 warships. It was Admiral Sareth's entire remaining military force. Everything she had left was being thrown into this single attack. She believed she was attacking a weak and divided human military. She believed that her forces would overwhelm the human defenders. She believed that her victory would turn the tide of the entire war. She was wrong about everything. As the Vex fleet moved forward, they were struck from 3 different directions at once. Human ships came out of the asteroid fields. Human ships came out of hyperspace. Human ships emerged from behind distant planets where they had been waiting. 600 human warships surrounded the Vex fleet. Admiral Sareth realized too late that she had made a terrible mistake. She tried to order a retreat, but the human forces had cut off her escape routes. She tried to fight her way through, but her ships were facing enemies that were superior in every way. The battle lasted 4 hours. When it was over, 400 Vex ships were destroyed. 150 were damaged so badly that they had to be abandoned. Only 50 managed to escape back toward Vex Prime, Admiral Sarath's ship. The Vex carrier Dominion was struck by a plasma cannon volley that tore through its main reactor. The explosion was visible from 3 star systems away. Thousands of Vex soldiers died. Admiral Sarath died along with them. With the death of Admiral Sarath, the Vex military command structure collapsed. There was no clear chain of command. There was no unified strategy. The surviving Vex military leaders began to argue with each other about what to do next. Some wanted to continue fighting. Some wanted to negotiate a peace. Some wanted to attempt one final assault. But without clear leadership, nothing happened. The Vex military simply stopped moving. They stopped fighting. They waited for someone to tell them what to do. Intelligence reports from Kevin Drake showed that political leaders on Vex Prime were discussing terms of surrender. The military had been broken. The war effort could not continue. The only question that remained was what terms humanity would accept. Commander Lucas Wright called a meeting of all the major human military leaders. Admiral Angela Morrison was there. Admiral Henry Crawford was there. Dr. Patricia Evans was there. Captain Marcus Steele was there. All of them had played major roles in humanity's victory. "The war is over," Lucas said simply. "The Vex cannot continue. They have no ships. They have no clear leadership. They have nothing left to fight with. What are the terms?" Crawford asked. "Total occupation of all Vex territory," Lucas said. "Human military will control all Vex worlds. Human government will establish law and order across their space. The Vex will live under human rule. That is the price of their betrayal." The decision was made. Humanity would not just defeat the Vex. Humanity would become the dominant power in the galaxy. Human flags would be raised over Vex government buildings. Human soldiers would patrol Vex streets. The species that had tried to destroy humanity would now live under human control. Word spread through the Galactic Council. The Vex, the species that had been thought to be one of the most powerful in the galaxy, had been defeated and occupied. The species that had been fighting for survival just months before had become the supreme military power in known space. Other species began to approach human diplomats. They wanted to establish trade relationships with humanity. They wanted to align themselves with the new power in the galaxy. They wanted to be on the winning side. The Traken, a species that had stayed neutral during the war, requested to join a military alliance with humanity. The Solarians, who had once been allies of the Vex, asked for human protection in exchange for their loyalty. Even the Krell Dominion, the original enemy that had brought humans and Vex together, requested peace talks with human leadership. Everyone understood now. Humanity was not just a military power. Humanity was the military power. The species that had been underestimated and attacked had become unstoppable. Lucas Wright stood in the command center and looked at the reports coming in from across human space. Vex worlds were being occupied by human forces. Vex governments were being replaced by human administrators. Vex military installations were being taken over by human soldiers. The seizure was total. The victory was complete. Humanity had struck back against betrayal and had seized everything. 20 minutes had passed since the invasion started. Catherine had killed 9 of the creatures. She had lost 2 soldiers. Private Chun had been cut down in the reactor section. Sergeant Houston had been cornered near the water recycling unit. There was nothing she could do for them. There was nothing anyone could do. Now Catherine was in the hydroponics sector, the vast greenhouse that provided oxygen and food for the station. It was a maze of plants and water channels, tall enough for the creatures to move through, but narrow enough that Catherine could use the plants as cover. She heard them coming before she saw them. Multiple creatures moving through the rows of green. At least 3 that she could hear. Maybe more. Catherine hid behind a thick hydroponic tank. Her rifle was hot in her hands. She had used 60% of her ammunition. That meant she had limited shots left. Everyone had to count. A creature came into view. It was the largest one yet. Its exoskeleton was marked with scars and damage from previous battles. This was a warrior. This was something that had fought wars before. Catherine knew that this was the commander, the thing leading the invasion. It moved with a purpose that the others did not have. It was searching for something. Searching for her. Catherine took the shot. She aimed for the upper body, where she had seen the other creatures fall. The plasma bolt connected, but something was different this time. The bolt hit the creature, and it barely slowed down. Its exoskeleton was thicker, harder, more armored. The creature turned toward Catherine. It had seen the shot. It knew where she was. Catherine ran. She ran between the rows of hydroponic plants, knocking them over behind her as she went. The creature followed. Its movements were smooth and powerful. A creature like that would never tire. A creature like that would hunt her down eventually. But Catherine had an idea. She reached the far end of the hydroponic sector, where the environmental controls were mounted on the wall. Large pipes carried hot water. Large pipes carried cold water. Large pipes carried nutrient solution. They could all be redirected. Catherine fired her plasma rifle at the main temperature control. The machinery sparked and caught fire. Hot water began spraying out of fractured pipes. Steam filled the air. The creature shrieked. It was the same terrible sound it had made before. Steam burned its exoskeleton. The creature fell back, confused and hurt. Catherine did not waste time. She had learned that the creatures relied on their eyes. Multiple eyes, but still eyes. She had learned that their sensory organs were on their upper body. She had learned that they could bleed. She fired again while the creature was blinded by steam. This shot went through the upper section where she could see openings in the exoskeleton. The creature fell. It did not get up. Catherine's 8th kill. Her 9th. The commander of the invasion force. She did not celebrate. She moved through the steam toward the secondary exit. There would be more creatures coming. There would always be more until either they won or she was dead. As she reached the exit, Catherine heard movement above her. She looked up and saw a creature trying to climb into the sector through the ventilation shaft. She fired upward. The bolt caught it in the head. It fell backward, her 10th kill. Catherine did not stop to think about what she had done. She only thought about what came next. Catherine Voss stood in the command center of Kepler-7, watching the screens flicker with red warning signals. The mining station sat on an asteroid in the dark part of space, where most humans never came. She was 28 years old, and this was her first real command. 12 soldiers under her orders. 12 people who looked to her to keep them alive. The alarm started screaming at 14:32 station time. "Contact," her second officer Davis called out. He was young, maybe 22, with scared eyes. Multiple ships dropping from jump space. They are moving fast. Catherine moved to the tactical display. The ships were shaped like nothing she had ever seen before. Long and angular, with sections that seemed to fold in on themselves. They were not human. They were not any species that registered in the human database either. "Get me identification," Catherine ordered. Her voice was steady. That was important. The team needed to hear calm. "No match in our records, Captain. But they are broadcasting something. It is a warning. They say we have 90 seconds to surrender, or they will take what they want by force." Catherine felt her jaw tighten. Surrender was not in her blood. Her family had come from a long line of soldiers. Her grandfather had fought in the wars on Earth. Her mother had died defending a colony from raiders. Catherine had joined the military because it was the only life she knew. Sound the evacuation alarm. Get everyone to the lower sectors. Now, Catherine ordered. The station shook. The first impacts had started. The mining station was not built for combat. It was built for digging resources out of rock. The shields would hold for a few minutes, maybe longer. It was not enough time to get everyone off the station. Catherine strapped on her combat armor, black and gray, with reinforced plating at the vital points. She pulled on her helmet and grabbed her plasma rifle. The weapon was heavy and warm in her hands. "Captain, what are you doing?" Davis asked. "I am going to the main airlock. Those things are coming in whether we like it or not. If I can slow them down, it buys the others time to get to the evacuation pods," Catherine said. "That is suicide," Davis said. "Maybe, but at least it is a choice," Catherine replied. She was already moving. The corridors of Kepler 7 were narrow and metal. Her boots echoed against the walls as she ran. Behind her, she could hear the sound of people running too. Some were crying. Some were praying. She pushed it all away. She could only think about one thing now: the main airlock. The decompression alarm was blaring in the section near the airlock. Catherine reached the reinforced door and sealed it behind her. She was alone now in the observation room that overlooked the docking bay. She could see the ships outside moving into position. Their design was terrifying in its wrongness. Nothing about them looked natural. Then the cutting began. Bright light flashed across the hull. They were cutting through the airlock manually, burning through metal like it was tissue paper. Catherine checked her rifle. Full charge. 2 thermal grenades on her belt. It was not much, but it was what she had. She positioned herself behind the reinforced barrier near the airlock door. She had a clear sight line to where the intruders would come through. The cutting stopped. There was a moment of silence that felt like forever. Then the airlock door exploded inward. The first creature came through like a nightmare dot. It was 8 feet tall, maybe taller. Its body was covered in a hard exoskeleton that looked like chitin or bone. It had too many limbs, 2 thick legs, 4 arms that ended in sharp points like swords or spears. Its head was a wedge shape with multiple eyes that glowed red in the darkness. It was not a creature. It was a weapon. Catherine did not hesitate. She pulled the trigger. The plasma bolt hit the creature in the center of its body. It screamed. The sound was not loud, but it was terrible. It was a sound no human throat could make. The creature fell forward, and Catherine could see the burn mark where her shot had connected. It was dead. Not wounded, dead. 2 minutes into the invasion, Catherine Voss had her first kill, but there was no time to think about it. A second creature was already coming through the airlock, and then a third. They moved fast, faster than Catherine expected. They moved like things that had fought before, things that had killed before. Catherine fired again and again. Her shots were clean. She had trained for this, though she had never thought it would happen for real. She had never thought the day would come when she stood in a mining station and fought creatures from another world. One of the creatures got closer. It was fast. It moved like nothing she had ever seen. Its front limbs came up, and Catherine could see that the points were dripping with something dark. Poison, maybe, or blood. Blood from something else. Catherine threw one of her grenades. The thermal grenade exploded in the narrow space. The creature took the blast full force. It fell. Catherine moved from her position and ran along the wall. The creatures were learning where she was. They were moving to flank her. She fired again. Another kill. The creatures fell like things made of glass, but there were always more. Behind the third one came a fourth. Behind the fourth came a fifth. Catherine backed toward the secondary exit. She knew every corridor of this station, every vent, every hiding place. These things did not. That was her advantage. That was the only advantage humans had. She reached the secondary exit and seen the door behind her. The creatures hit it hard. The metal door bent under the force. It would not hold for long. Catherine ran. Her boots pounded on the metal grating. Behind her, the secondary door exploded inward. The creatures followed. They always followed. They moved through the corridors like water flowing downhill. Nothing stopped them, but Catherine was not trying to stop them anymore. She was buying time. That was all she could do. Buy time for Davis to get the others to the pods. Buy time for the station to send its distress signal. Buy time for someone, anyone, to come and help. She ran deeper into the station, and the creatures followed. The hunt had begun. The last creature fell at 15:32 station time. Exactly 1 hour after the invasion started. Catherine stood in the main corridor of Kepler 7, breathing hard inside her helmet. She was covered in the dark fluid that the creatures bled. Some of it was her blood, too. She had a wound on her shoulder where one of the creature's limbs had cut through her armor. She had a deep cut on her side. She was alive, but barely. Davis came running through the corridor with the remaining soldiers. 3 of them. 3 out of 12. 11 people had died or were missing in the last hour. 11 people who had families and homes and dreams. 11 people, because these creatures had come from the stars looking for easy prey. "Captain, you are hurt," Davis said. His young face was white with shock. "I'm alive," Catherine said. "Is everyone else secure?" "The evacuation pods are loaded." 17 people made it off the station. Another 8 are still in the lower sectors. "We think they barricaded themselves in the medical bay," Davis replied. Catherine nodded. 17 plus 8. That was 25. But they had started with more than 70 people on the station. That meant 45 were dead or unaccounted for. Catherine pushed the number away. There would be time to grieve later. Send a team to the medical bay. Get those 8 people out. I will begin a full system scan to make sure there are no more invaders in the station, Catherine ordered. Davis saluted and ran. Catherine made her way to the command center. The computer was still working. The display still showed the tactical information. She began scanning the station section by section. No more contacts. The creatures were gone. All of them. Catherine sent out a distress signal on every frequency she could access. She reported the invasion. She reported the casualties. She reported that the station was still intact but severely damaged. She did not mention the creatures. Not yet. First, she wanted to understand what they were. It took 3 hours to get a response. A military ship from the nearest human colony called Darwin Station. The commander, Captain Helena Roberts, came through the communication system. She was older than Catherine and had the voice of someone who had seen wars before. "Kepler 7, this is Darwin Station. We received your distress signal. What happened out there?" Roberts asked. Catherine gave her the report. The ships. The creatures. The invasion. The fact that they had repelled the attack. She tried to keep her voice professional, but she could hear the exhaustion in it. Roberts was silent for a moment. Then she said something that made Catherine understand that everything had changed. "Catherine, I am forwarding your combat log to Earth Command right now. But first, I want to tell you something. The description you are giving me matches reports we have been hearing from other colonies. The Zethran Empire. They have been expanding for years. We thought they were just traders. We thought they were peaceful. No one has ever fought them before. No human has ever fought them and won." Catherine did not know what to say to that. "You defended your station with 12 soldiers against a military invasion force," Roberts continued. "You killed how many of them?" 14, Catherine said. "At least 14. I stopped counting." You killed 14 of creatures that no military power in human space has ever faced in combat. You held your ground. You protected your people. That is not just a victory, Catherine. That is a statement to the entire galaxy. Catherine was still processing this when Davis entered the command center with the 8 people from the medical bay. They were scared and hurt, but they were alive. Catherine turned back to the communication system. She had more immediate problems. The station needed repairs. The wounded needed medical care. The dead needed to be recovered and honored. But somewhere in the back of her mind, she understood that something larger had happened here. Something that would echo through space and time in ways she could not yet comprehend. The Zethran Empire had come to Kepler-7, believing that humanity was soft, weak, easy to conquer. They had learned otherwise. 3 days passed. The rescue ship from Darwin Station arrived with medical supplies and repair crews. The wounded were treated. The station was secured. And Catherine sat in the medical bay of Kepler-7 with bandages on her shoulder and side, listening to the reports coming in from across human space. The Zethran attack had not been isolated. At least 5 other human settlements had reported attacks in the same time frame. But all of those attacks had failed. In every case, human forces had repelled the invaders. In every case, the Zethrans had retreated. Something had changed in how the Zethrans fought. They were no longer confident. They were no longer moving with the certainty of predators. Something had made them afraid. Catherine learned the answer when Captain Roberts came to visit her in the medical bay. "We have intercepted Zethran communications," Roberts said. She was holding a data tablet with secured information on it. "They are talking about what happened here. About you." Roberts played an audio recording. The language was not human, but the computer translated it. A Zethran voice, harsh and clicking, described a human female warrior. It described how she had fought with precision and courage. It described how she had learned the weaknesses of the Zethran warriors in real time and exploited them. It described how she had refused to break. Even when surrounded and outnumbered, the Zethran voice repeated her name over and over. "Catherine Voss, Catherine Voss, Catherine Voss." "They are speaking your name like it is something dangerous," Roberts said. "In Zethran culture, when a warrior's name is spoken with reverence, it means the warrior has proven themselves beyond normal standards. They are not just calling you a soldier. They are calling you a hunter, a predator, someone to be afraid of." Catherine listened to the recording again. She could hear the fear in the Zethran voice. Even through the translation, even through the alien sounds, she could hear it. These creatures that had invaded her home were afraid of her. That night, Catherine stood at the observation window of the command center. She looked out at the asteroid that had been her home. She looked at the damage left by the invasion. The scorched metal. The shattered sections. The graves they were digging in the station grounds for the 45. People who had died. She received a data transmission from a neutral monitoring station in the outer region. It contained more Zethran communications. More soldiers discussing what had happened. More voices repeating her name. In every major Zethran military base across the sector, the story was being told. A human captain had held her ground against invasion. 14 Zethran warriors had fallen. The Zethran Empire had been forced to retreat. Catherine understood now that this was not just about Kepler-7 anymore. This was about something bigger, something that would ripple outward through space and time. She received notice of her promotion the next morning. Captain was now her permanent rank. She was offered a choice. Return to Earth for a formal ceremony and commendation, or accept a new posting commanding a larger defensive force. Catherine looked at the promotions offer for a long time. She thought about the 45 people who had died. She thought about the Zethran creatures lying dead in the corridors of her station. She thought about Davis and the other survivors She thought about what Captain Roberts had said. In Zethran culture, when a warrior's name was whispered with fear, it meant something. Catherine sent her response back. She would accept the new posting. She would command the larger defensive force. The Zethran Empire needed to learn that humanity was not soft. Humanity was not weak. Humanity was something to be afraid of. 6 weeks after the invasion of Kepler-7, the effects were spreading across human space like ripples in still water. Trade negotiations that had stalled for months suddenly moved forward. Human merchants found that they had more leverage than they had expected. Alien traders were offering better prices. They were treating human representatives with new respect. Human colonies that had been struggling with limited resources found that they could expand their territorial claims without the usual resistance. The galactic powers had realized something. They had realized that humanity was not a species to be taken advantage of. Catherine took command of Defense Station Alpha in the Outer Rim. It was a larger installation than Kepler-7. More soldiers, better weapons, more responsibility. But Catherine did not feel overwhelmed by it. She had already proven herself in the worst conditions imaginable. Her soldiers respected her immediately. They had heard the stories. They knew who she was. Some of them had fought in the skirmishes that had followed Kepler-7. All of them knew that their captain had killed 14 alien warriors and lived to tell about it. Catherine established new training protocols. She taught her soldiers what she had learned during that 1 hour of combat. She taught them how to recognize alien combat patterns. She taught them how to find weaknesses in armor. She taught them that courage and adaptation could overcome superior numbers. The Zethran Empire made one more attempt to expand into human space. They attacked a colony called New Hope with a much larger force. They wanted to prove that Kepler-7 had been an accident, that Catherine Voss had been a lucky anomaly. They were wrong. The colony held. Catherine's training had been absorbed throughout human military. The soldiers of New Hope fought like Catherine had fought. They held their ground. They learned their enemy's weaknesses. They refused to break. The Zethrans retreated again. Catherine stood in the observation deck of Defense Station Alpha, watching the stars. She was receiving a message from Earth Command. Official recognition of her heroism. A medal. A permanent place in the history of human military achievement. An invitation to serve on the Defense Council itself. But Catherine was not thinking about medals or history or councils. She was thinking about the 45 people who had died on Kepler-7. She was thinking about Chun and Houston and all the others who had not survived. She was thinking about the future, about what it meant that the galaxy was beginning to understand what humanity could do, about what it meant that her name was being whispered with fear in Zethran military bases across the sector. A soldier approached Catherine on the observation deck. Young, maybe 23, from Earth. Captain, there's a transmission coming in from deep space. It is in human language, but it is being broadcast from a Zethran ship. They want to speak with you directly, the soldier said. Catherine nodded. She went to the communication center and opened the channel. A voice came through, harsh, clicking, but speaking English now. The commander of the Zethran forces that had attacked New Hope. Captain Catherine Voss, I speak to you as warrior to warrior. You have proven that humanity is strong, stronger than we believed. The Zethran Empire respects strength. We are withdrawing from the human sectors. We will not return unless you give us reason to return. But know this, your name will be remembered. In 10,000 years, in 10 million years, when our species have changed beyond recognition, your name will still be remembered. You are the reason the galaxy learned to fear the humans. You are the reason we know that soft humans are not soft at all. The transmission ended. Catherine stood in the communications center in silence. She had not sought this. She had only wanted to protect her people. She had only wanted her soldiers to come home alive. But sometimes what you want and what you become are two different things. Sometimes one person's refusal to surrender becomes the thing that changes everything. Catherine turned back to the observation window. She could see Earth's star from Defense Station Alpha, a distant light in the darkness. Her home, the world that had produced her, the world that the galaxy was beginning to understand, was different than it had thought. She thought about the young soldiers under her command. They were brave. They would be ready for whatever came next. They had been trained by someone who knew what it meant to stand alone against impossible odds. Catherine Voss had come to Kepler 7 as a young captain with little experience. She had left as something else entirely. She had left as the warrior whose name was whispered in fear across the galaxy. And somewhere in the depths of space, in Zethran military bases and alien trading posts and neutral monitoring stations, that name continued to be whispered. Catherine Voss. Catherine Voss. The human who would not break. The human who would not surrender. The human who had shown the galaxy that its understanding of humanity was dangerously wrong.